Hello, hello. This is Allie Decker, and you're listening to the Long Game Podcast. Today, David and I answer the pressing question of, should you create a glossary as part of your SEO strategy? Now, we've had a number of clients ask us about this, whether it's something that should complement their blog efforts, replace their blog efforts, and then how to make that decision if you're starting from scratch. We have lots of hot takes in this episode. We talk about the pros and cons of creating a glossary, some of my personal experiences at Shopify and HubSpot. And then, if you're really bullish on creating a glossary, kind of some best practices to follow as you get started on that project. So without further ado, here is David and I talking about should you create a glossary as part of your SEO strategy. Enjoy. Hey, David. Today we're going to talk about should you create a glossary as part of your SEO strategy. I added the caveat part of because I think it's pretty common sense glossaries shouldn't be a sole SEO strategy. We can discuss that down the line, but we at Omniscient have gotten quite a few questions about this from prospective and current clients. So we were talking about just having a chat, talking about the pros and cons, sharing some strong opinions. So
we're not just going to have a chat. We're going to
have a
some
fight.
Very hot takes about these silly glossary strategies.
Well, all right. I guess we should start with defining a glossary. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but I'd like to define it just as setting a baseline for the chat. How I would define a glossary is a set of landing pages. That's typically what I've seen. So I guess that factor could vary, but a set of pages that defines terminology relevant to the audience of the company. And the purpose of the glossary is to rank in search for definitions and descriptions only. The glossaries I've seen, the one at Shopify, pretty basic 1, 2, 3 word phrases, not typically long tail, and the paragraphs, maybe 1 or 2 paragraphs of definitions tops. Again, I mean, my take on it. How would you define it, David?
I think that's about it. That's what I've seen from companies and how I'd imagine it to be. It's kind of just like a dictionary for industry terms.
Yeah.
Yeah, a very basic.
Dictionary is a good word.
Very basic SEO quote strategy, if I've ever seen one.
And the glossary that we're discussing today is different than a single blog post that defines a bunch of glossary terms. So in my research preparation for today, I searched like glossary SEO or something like that just to see some different takes. I was reading some Reddit threads, my favorite. And there, HubSpot has a couple blog articles that are like, SEO glossary or a glossary of SEO terms. And it's a blog post, one post that defines a bunch of things. So that post is then optimized for the term glossary. It's not a glossary in and of itself, just to set that up.
That's interesting. So instead of having one page for every keyword, it's just like one page and here are all the keywords you need, like phrases you need to know in whatever industry.
Yeah. So that's not what we're talking about today. That to me is a blog post, part of a blog strategy.
Yeah, that's a good differentiation. I didn't think about that.
Yeah. Well, I think we should go ahead and just dive into the pros and cons of creating a glossary for SEO. I have some questions later about, if someone would define or decide to define all their terms through a glossary, we can talk about best practices, but I'd like to talk about maybe benefits and disadvantages or cons, takeaways. I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe even talk about cases where like it makes sense to do one. If ever, I'm sure there are probably cases.
Yeah, I think let's start with the pros. Because people have glossaries. Like there's a reason that they exist and that they became a thing. They're easy to create. I mean, whether they are landing pages or site pages or whatever the format is, typically they're easy to create in that the content is short and sweet, and they're pretty they're able to be duplicated. Like I'm assuming someone behind the scenes is just copy, and then replacing all the text. So that's a pro, because typically you just define it and that's it. Theoretically, it's easy to rank for these definitions. You have a keyword and you're just defining it, and then it pops up on Google. So that's definitely a pro, especially if you want to snag those featured snippets, or people also ask snippets, or just show up more on Google. So I think that's a pro. I have some opinions on how that could shake out down the line, but if that's important to you, I think it could be achieved through a glossary.
I feel like it's the way I phrase things are clearly going to be biased, but I feel like it's a quick, lazy way to say you've created a bunch of pages for all these keywords.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For companies that are like content, like, there you go. That's content technically. But in my mind, it's not the best, most genuine, most permanent. I don't know. It doesn't have a lot of permanence behind it. It's kind of a quick win, and not in a good way. So, but if you're looking for speed, I guess that's a pro. I was reading a bit about like the UX of a glossary and how, you're technically meeting search intent. Someone's searching for an informational query. What is SEO? Define it. And you kind of meet a need. So the UX that it delivers, I think it does the bare minimum, but it provides a decent experience there. So again, if that's important to you, I don't know. I feel like I'm just giving the bare minimum of this right now.
Yeah, you're giving the bare minimum. I want to hear the hot takes. Like
hot takes.
Someone says, "Oh, I want to rank for what is SEO," and I'm like, "Why?"
So
why do you?
Well, one of the pros I read, I was really deep into this like Reddit hole. Someone said glossaries are good for simple terms that wouldn't make for a good blog post. And it caught me because I was like, well, let's back up a second and just what makes a good or a bad blog post. Because if you have a term that has enough volume to create a glossary for it, who's saying it wouldn't make a good blog post? Because in my mind, it's like, it's content. And yeah, you might need to put some more effort into it and actually write 750 to 1500 words versus 30. But I think if you have a potent keyword, it could be a blog post. You just have to give it some shape and narrative. So that's a hot take, is like, I don't think there's any case that a glossary is a better choice than a blog post.
I think it's also, it's a little bit short-sighted, because when I think about any times I've ever looked up the definition of something, it's just to make sure I'm using the word correctly. But that's kind of it. So if someone's producing content for this keyword, it's like, do you want to capture people who just want to know the definition of a term, or do you want to capture people who are in your buyer's journey and like looking to evaluate your software?
Right.
A glossary rarely, if ever, solves for those folks.
Yeah. And if someone is truly just looking for a definition, you'd classify them as top of funnel, or even like pre-top of funnel, or whatever you'd say. You still want to present the best chance of capturing their attention. So you could still define a query in a blog post, but you could take it a couple steps further and show your personality, feature some experts, showcase like use cases, real customers, example, like the typical blog post breakdown. So you still get that win of like, oh, look, I came here for a definition and I found it. But, oh, this is interesting. I never thought about this topic in this way, or I had no idea this company existed. And I mean, even though people look for definitions all the time, like there's definitely a potential to capture their curiosity and take them further. if not just presenting the best impression of your company or your publication. I think glossaries are lazy. So to me, it's like, if I do stumble on a glossary, I'm just getting the definition and like getting the heck out of there. Like, I don't care who it is.
I feel like so far we're talking about like, oh, a glossary is this. And if you're trying to do this, great. But I think anyone who's listening to this is like, can a glossary help me get sales or like leads?
Absolutely.
And that's probably where we're going to go into for cons. But
oh yeah. I'm
eager to get to that.
Okay. So, well, if we're going to stay on like the top of funnel traffic related goals, just a few more notes on that. Glossaries can cannibalize your other content. So you create all these like quick win pages and they just fuck up the other efforts that you might have or your future team might have, right? Like the era of content folks that come behind you are going to have to deal with all this lazy stuff you created. So the longevity, like glossaries have no longevity. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, they have little to no conversion potential. There's no natural way to present your product, much less a conversion asset of any sort, And if the intent is to just answer a question or define a query, no one's going to be interested in some like random, like, oh, while you're here, try my tool. That to me is not a natural transition. So
yeah. I was just on a call with someone about this and they're like, hey, we have this page for, I don't know if I want to use the actual query. I'll just use it. I won't use the brand name though. We have a page for partner management software. And we have a glossary page for partner management software. Mm-hmm. And our homepage also ranks for partner management software. And the question is, what do we do? What do we optimize? And the way I laid it out was, well, it's great. All of those can coexist, but you need to decide which one's most important for your goals. Like they asked if they should optimize a glossary page. And I said, well, the glossary page literally has 3 sentences on it. And someone looking for the definition is not going to want to use your software. Right. But someone reading a blog post, like in-depth, long-form blog post about it, maybe. Right. The homepage, like, cool, it ranks to that keyword. But homepages I view as more like product marketing. Like it's not tailored for that phrase, but a blog format gives you the space to answer that initial query and also go like lead them down a funnel to evaluation. So I was like, blog post should prioritize. Like, and they asked about the glossary. And I was like, glossary can live there, but it doesn't serve any business goal besides that you like define what it is. Yeah. And I think tying it to like, hey, do you just want eyeballs or do you want eyeballs that will actually want to use your software? Like that helps get the focus in.
Yeah. For companies that are bullish on the glossary strategy or they've been grandfathered into a glossary or something like that, you can certainly leverage if those pages already have great traffic, they've been ranking consistently on page 1, you can leverage those for internal linking. You can and have more of a soft funnel approach. So maybe at the end of the glossary, you can say, read more about this topic in our blog post on X, and you just take it further down the funnel. It's going to take a little bit longer. And you probably will have folks spill out of the funnel more than you would have them continue down. But if you're starting from scratch, I would not recommend it. I think it just becomes a battle down the line. And there's also the question, and this is more of just an ops thing, is like, who the hell owns it? On all the teams I've been on, we're pitching topics, locating keywords. Oh, the glossary already has a piece on this. It's ranking number 1. Who owns it? You get passed around all the dev because it's usually a site page. So there's no owner, and then there's no way to not only update it if the topic changes, but then leverage it for links. It's nearly impossible. So it's just kind of out there and you're just battling yourself.
Interesting.
You versus you.
You said you got passed around to the devs. So is it like the pages were built essentially by engineering because it was like, hey, it's the same thing, it's a template, a keyword definition is probably pulling from a database and that's how you update it.
Yeah. Because they're usually site pages. So if you're in a large organization on the blog team, you usually work in a CMS. You rarely have access to just the website itself. Obviously this is just my limited experience, but seems pretty common because it's like technically content, but not content. And sometimes it lives under like the knowledge base team or like the customer service team. That's a whole other ballgame. But if you're just starting from scratch, I would say no. I would just take the definition and build on it, even if it's a short blog post, even if it's just 750 words and it's not like the ultimate guide. Like that's better than a glossary, in my opinion. So.
Yeah. Also, I don't know what the ROI is of having a marketer, maybe an intern, like sit there and spin up hundreds of definition pages. Like you get the pages, but you end up with a lot of challenges. It sounds like, I didn't think about that, but the operational side of like who owns these, who's going to update them if they need updating, who creates new ones if needed, adds another challenge, especially for bigger companies.
Yeah. Well, and the folks that argue that glossaries rank better and you can capture more featured snippets like the paragraph or the list, or people also ask, or just any of those like packs on Google, I don't think people realize that decreases your click-through rate. Like Google wants to keep their traffic on Google and they're making life better for you, the user, not for you. And you might be in that paragraph snippet and it's great for traffic. You know, if someone gets the definition, they want to read more, bam, you're right there. Some folks who are only looking for a definition, they're like, I got it. I can exit now. I'm good. So it doesn't actually serve not only bottom line goals, but just traffic goals either. I don't think that's a long-term win to pursue.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I shit on glossaries a lot for companies who are focused on like, you know, clients that we work with are always like, I want to drive leads. And it's like, well, shouldn't be doing a glossary. When I think of glossaries, like you can do it, but if you've truly tapped out the really important keywords that drive leads and you really need to grow traffic, like your Shopify or Square or HubSpot or something, spin up all those pages, like grab that traffic because you have the brand and they'll trust your brand more. But if you're just starting out, you should not be spending your time or bandwidth or money on that.
No, there's still value to defining those industry terms, especially for maybe a blue ocean tool. We're going to tap on Alex's latest post, blue ocean versus red ocean. So if you're new to the industry, if you're like a first mover or a new product in a specific industry and you really do need to define stuff because people don't know what you're talking about, make it a blog post, you know, because then you have a lot more like room to work. You have nearly endless word count and you can feature more imagery and customers and stuff like that. Like we're not saying don't define that stuff, just through the mechanism of a glossary is not, I don't think, the best choice, in my opinion. I did see a question that was posed. If your competitors are creating glossaries, should you? What does this say about your audience and kind of meeting their needs if competitors are doing it? What would you say to that?
I don't think what competitors are doing are a way to gauge what your audience wants.
Yeah.
Is the first answer.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I've been in a situation where it's like, oh, they're doing this, we should do it. And then we do it and it's like, wait a minute, this isn't doing shit for us. Like we wasted all this time copying this thing, which I guess sometimes you just have to learn the hard way, but you just don't know if it's even working for your competitors. So if I think it requires that additional research, I would bet real money that your like a company's audience is probably not looking, like who they're trying to sell to is not looking at definitions. People looking at definitions are like interns or like college students or someone who's changing careers that has no clue about the space. They're not, those people are not looking to buy software or a product or anything.
Or like you said, just like making sure you got it right. Like, am I using this term? Am I spelling it correctly? Like all that stuff. It's not like I want to buy partner management software. It's like, oh, what is that again?
Maybe different. Like, I think I tend to look at things from a B2B lens, but if you're B2C and you're focused on consumers, maybe. There was this B2C product company. It was like vitamin subscription or something. I forgot what it was called, but I subscribed to it. And they had a whole glossary of like all the different vitamins and nutrients and stuff. And I actually read a lot of them. There was stuff about like ashwagandha. And I'm like, what the fuck's ashwagandha? So I looked it up. Like I went to them before I went to Wikipedia. But I think, it depends on the industry.
I think it's brings up a larger point about, displaying authority through content. So whether it is your blog or your glossary, which I guess depending on how you present it, again, your glossary could be on your blog or whatever. But yeah, I mean, if you have a product, folks have questions, you obviously want to be the one answering those questions to just build that trust and keep folks on your site and all kind of other benefits like that. But definitely for a B2C company, maybe embarking on something new, health related, cannabis related, like a lot of different industries, it'd be nice to be that kind of source of truth. Ultimately, you make the sale, but you build that trust. But again, it just comes down to like the method through which you educate people. I still don't think a glossary is the best means. I think you can do that. You can provide the same value through a blog post. It takes more work, but you can rank just the same, capture snippets just the same, and convert, and have more evergreen potential for Google, and be more interesting and diversify yourself. Like there's just so much more, way more benefit than things that detract from creating a blog. Like truly the only con I can think of is it just takes more time, but that's not even really a con. It's just the only thing I can think of that differentiates the two. Can you think of anything?
No, but I think where my mind went was like, if I were to use a real example, kind of related to what we've both been discussing, is like, let's talk about management. Like, do you want to rank for what is management? Yeah. Or do you want to rank with a blog post that talks about like challenges that first-time managers often run into and how to avoid that? Like, I think that builds a lot more trust and credibility than defining what management is.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm always so curious who the hell is searching for just generic terms like that. Like there's thousands and thousands and thousands of searchers every month for terms like management, marketing, freelancing. The SERPs are so interesting, but you're not going to rank for a little glossary page on pages like that.
It'd be really funny and meta is I wonder if it's just other marketers looking up those search terms, seeing what ranks.
Actually, I had this epiphany like years ago, and I had like a tweet queued up for this, and I was like, I don't know. How much search volume could be attributed to people looking up the queries for writing content? Like truly, what percentage of MSV, monthly search volume, is comprised of folks doing like intent research?
Yeah. I mean, think about all the marketers in the US. There's a lot of great marketers in India, and India has like a larger population in the US. Like there's lots of VA marketers and stuff that people hire in the Philippines, like all around the world. Like I think you could realistically say like, oh yeah, there's probably 5,000 marketers writing about what is content marketing.
Yeah. Well, you take the MSV and cut it in half for like real potential customers or readers or whatever, like folks that are really looking to like solve a problem or make a purchase or whatever. The other half is just people, very meta, people looking for content to write content.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of blown right now.
Whew. The cycle that we live in. Content.
Yes.
Marketers marketing to marketers who market.
So should people do glossaries?
No.
And if so, no. Is that a hard no?
So I did make some notes about like in what circumstances can glossaries and blogs coexist. So if you are bullish on creating a glossary, or you've been grandfathered into a glossary, or you just want to make both work, or you have some stakeholder in the world that's like, yeah, we want to do this. Like you have to do this.
Yeah. Sometimes it's out of the person's control. They're just like, oh, my CMO wants it, so I have to do it.
So I made a couple notes on this because I myself have had to manage content alongside a glossary that I couldn't even touch, like couldn't find the owner, couldn't find access. It just was there. So I think what's most important first and foremost is documentation and tracking. So, we've had conversations about treating your content like a library, in that, you should track a lot of the elements of your content, what keywords you're pursuing. And in doing that, you won't compete with yourself. So you'll keep track of what's been published on the glossary, and then you'll know how to better leverage those posts. So if you mention, I don't know, partner, what were we saying, partner management software. If you mention it, you can just, make a best practice to link to that glossary page, and not to create a separate blog about that. So I think documentation is where a lot of people go wrong, but I think it can help avoid the cannibalization challenge when it comes to glossaries. And then, even though we talked about how glossaries have little to no value besides just making a definition, if you want your glossary to have a goal or a purpose, I think it's good to set that up ahead of time. Maybe be better about tracking your keywords and your organic traffic from your glossary. Maybe if it's an experiment, there needs to be something you're trying to get out of it. I think a lot of folks just put it out into the world and just, here's my definition. Maybe you'll find it, maybe you won't. Obviously, any kind of content needs to have goals. And, we talk a lot about metrics and making sure all of our content can be tracked and its performance can be measured. I think you can do the same with glossaries. I just think expectations should probably be lower. But that's it. Those are the things I'm thinking of if those need to coexist. But if you're starting from scratch, don't do a glossary. Finn.